Greetings. This is Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is an update, a special report on the ongoing Texas border crisis. The story is changing almost by the hour, so instead of giving you what I have at the moment, I have some news that's interesting, but I thought it would be a good idea to give you some background, because a lot of people are talking about actually understanding what's going on. Very few people do. And one of the things that's being discussed is the constitutional rights of Texas to defend itself. So I thought I'd give people a little civics lesson. Frightfully few people in the United States ever bother to read their Constitution or know much about it. They hear of the Bill of Rights, but that's an amendment. The main body of the text is actually quite important, and it's only a few pages long. It doesn't take long to read. The two parts of the Constitution, the main body of the document that gives Texas the rights it has and also outlines the obligation of the federal government, are as follows. In Article 1, Section 10, and I shall read verbatim, "No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay." And in Article 4, Section 4, it reads as follows. "The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and of application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence." There you have it. That's as black and white as it gets, people. There's no way that can be interpreted any differently than how it's written. States have a right to defend themselves, and the federal government has an obligation to defend the states. This is an invasion, and it's been going on for a long time. This is the Constitution. This is where, here in the United States, there's nothing higher. We don't have a state religion. We have the law, and this is the top of the heap of the law. The fact that there are 5 members of the Supreme Court that actually don't agree with this is quite nuts. If sanity was at the head of our affairs, you would have had a 9-0 decision with a rather terse, get the hell out of here and stop wasting our time comment. This is how bad it's gotten in the United States. It's so bad there are people in government, in leadership, and a significant number of citizens that don't go along with this. If a nation is being invaded, and that's what it is, and that's what people are now calling it, invaded by millions of people, many of whom are obviously of military age and physique, shall we say. They've been sent here from other continents. Interesting to see how people from Asia, China, Africa have made it to South America so they can come in through our border. We now have more potential, and I would say more enemies, in our midst than we have at any time in history. If you look at the millions of people who've come into the United States, and you just take a fraction of that and put it down as hostiles that are willing to do serious harm, and it's quite obvious based on the way the crime is shot through the ceiling, they're doing serious harm. There are more foreign invaders now than there were during the American Revolution or the War of 1812, the last time we were invaded. The Civil War, different sort of thing. You had Americans fighting Americans. But the last time we were invaded, it was a fraction of the number, and they were a lot more civilized than what we see coming across the border. The British were total gentlemen compared to what we're seeing. This is the only time in history I know of where a nation's government, a nation, has gone along with an invasion of its sovereign territory and the endangerment of its existence and the lives of its people. Prove me wrong. This is how insane it's gotten. But, and this is a big but, do I think it's going to turn into a civil war? No. But I do think that the Biden administration is cooked, and I think the Democratic Party is cooked, and I'm going to explain why. Again, there's a difference between drinking from the fountain of knowledge and those who only gargle. It's like how many people read the Constitution, how many people read books. There's some reports now that there was cooperation at the border. There's been a few reports this morning I've gotten from my own sources that there's cooperation down in Texas at the border between the National Guard, law enforcement, and feds. Now, one of the things that I find very annoying about my fellow citizens is how little they know about their own country. Very few ever come to Washington. I mean, I'm just outside Washington. Very few of them know how their system of government works. Very few of them know who their congressmen or women are. And very few of them have ever bothered to meet them in their district offices, which is pretty easy to do. You look up your local congressman's district office, you go there, you'll probably meet the guy and have coffee with him, because very few people do that. That being said, let me tell you something also about federal employees. Because of where I'm at, I've gotten to know a lot of federal employees over the years. The average American who is a little uninformed thinks that there's a bunch of people here who are a bunch of blind robots that are marching to the orders of the Biden administration. It is the furthest thing from the truth. What I think you're going to see is a rebellion against the Biden operation, the Biden criminal gang, crime gang, if you want to be honest about it. You're going to see a backlash at the federal employee level. Here's why. There was a movie some years ago called Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. It came out, I think, in 1998. It was entertaining fun back in the pre-9/11 days, and I'd recommend people look it up. It's about an NSA engineer who goes rogue and ends up causing all sorts of mayhem. And it turned out in the movie that the motivation of the rogue employee played by Gene Hackman was he wanted his pension back. He wanted his job back. He wanted his back pay. He wanted his benefits. He wanted his health care. In spite of all of the conspiracy theories that federal employees go rogue all the time and they take on decision-making power to do all sorts of nefarious things, the average rank and file federal employee just wants to keep their job, keep their head down, and retire on real good benefits and a real good pension. And that's it. There aren't any that are going to die on a hill for Joe Biden, at least any that are sane. They're going to pick up where the wind is blowing, and they are going to go by the book. You also have to use some common sense. I do not believe for a second anyone who chose a career in border protection at Homeland Security did so thinking, oh boy, I get to help the United States be destroyed by a massive influx of foreign invaders. I don't think any of them, thought about that when they signed up. They thought about probably the motivation of doing a good job. A lot of people at the federal level are like that, in spite of what people may like to believe. What the Chinese call an iron rice bowl when you work for the feds. It's very hard to get rid of you, and it's a great, great job. I have worked in federal facilities before, and I remember one guy making a remark, which I didn't like, saying, you know what, I've had this job for 30 years, and I've never worked a day in my life. I once met an attorney working for the federal government, and he said, you know, as a lawyer, this is the only job where you can never win a case in your entire career and never have to worry about losing your job. People who work for the federal government don't want to lose their jobs. They've worked very hard to get those jobs, and they're not going to take any risks. It remains to be seen what the Biden administration is going to do, but I'm getting the distinct aroma of the system starting to turn its wheels and crushing him and everyone around him. Kind of like in the adventure movies when you go into the temple and you do something you shouldn't, and these ancient gears and pulleys and stones and sand start pouring, and the bad guy gets crushed into pulp. And I think that's what's going to happen to the Biden people. It's not going to go well. I don't believe for a second that federal employees, at least the ones I've met, there might be a few nuts. There might be a few idiots that think, well, he's ordering this, I'm going to go along with it. They're not going to do very well. They're going to lose their jobs, and they're going to have to work in a 7-Eleven or something to that effect. But I think that self-preservation is going to kick in at the federal employee level. They're going to see where things are going. They're going to see this is crazy, and insanity can only go so far with human beings before they wake up, and we are there. The worm has turned. People are waking up, and they're realizing, my goodness, our country's in physical danger. My family's in physical danger. My home, my business, the roads, the supermarkets, they're in physical danger because of what's been allowed to happen. And this is the problem with criminals. Criminals always overreach. They always go too far. That's how they get caught. And that's what they have done. That's what they have done. There's been a few pebbles that have gone down the hill, and now it's turning into an avalanche. And it's going to crush an awful lot of institutions and careers that were betting on wokeness. And this is just starting because people are going to wake up to everything, I predict. If they don't, we're dead. But when a country's been invaded like this, it has no choice but to fight back. The downside of this is that it's going to be a mess to clean up for years. There are millions of people in this country, and how many of them are here for rather nefarious activities such as terrorism, assassination, murder? There are a lot of reports of the cartels that have already set up substantial operations, caches of weapons. How many people have died of fentanyl in this country? How many people have died of drugs? How much human trafficking is going on? How many children vanished? Whoever's the next president, it'll probably be Donald Trump. It's going to be a hell of a mess to clean up. And that's why I'm going to end this report with a bit of advice for those of you who consider yourselves Democrats. I have some news for you. Your political party is not the party of John F. Kennedy, or even Lyndon Johnson, or even Jimmy Carter. When this is all over, if the United States survives it, members of the Democratic Party are going to be about as popular in the United States as former members of the National Socialist German Workers' Party were after World War II. You guys pushed it way too far. Now, I'm not a fan of the Republicans, frankly. I'm not. There's a lot of issues I have with them, but they did not do this. You guys did. And I would recommend one of three courses of action. You either become independents, especially if you're holding office. You become independent, join the Republicans if it works for you, or probably start something new. And it's probably the last alternative because a lot of you have some ideology that you adhere to, but the destruction of one's country is not going to go down very well. This doesn't mean that people would do harm to you physically, but I think it would be damn hard to find a job when this is over. But for those of you out there who are itching for a civil war, I'm going to leave you with this. You don't know what you're talking about. People look back to the first Civil War. I hope it's the only one. And there's a bit too much, shall we say, nostalgia, if that could be a word for it. My father was born in the 1920s, and as a child, he got to meet real Civil War veterans. And back then, they used to visit schools. And you know what they said? Civil war was a bad idea. We shouldn't have done that. We should have found a better way. If there's ever a case where the United States goes at it internally, it won't be what you think, because the rest of the world, of which there are many enemies of this country, are not going to sit idly by and watch. They're going to get in on it. If we ever went at it internally, we'd lose everything. There would be no winner, because all of our enemies overseas would be here. And they would be, it would be a mess. So what I think, to close on this, is what we're going to see is a rebellion at the federal employee level, and the only choice that the Democrats are going to have is to take this nutcase out of the White House. But I think it's too late for that. I don't think they can do that. I don't think they know what to do. This is something that's come out of left field. The states are fighting back. Troops are being sent to Texas. Texas is going to be arresting and deporting people on its own. Federal employees are not going to risk their livelihoods for a politician that nobody likes. That's it for now. If you like what you hear, please be so kind as to subscribe and consider a paid subscription. Please share this with your friends. I do welcome feedback. You can reach me at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's one word, feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I can also be followed on Twitter. My sign there is MICCAMPEN, a little @ MICCAMPEN. That stands for Microphone Camera Pen, which is my journalistic side. Be good, be safe, be vigilant, and good day.